Floss-tube. This is Sarah, the Can-Am Stitcher. I am filming again in my office. I was going to film from my studio, however, the weather today is not conducive to that. There is a partial storm going on, and so part of the sky is dark, there's rain, and another part of the sky is all lit up with sun, so my studio has some varied lighting right now. Anyways, thank you for joining me again. This is my fourth Floss-tube, and I want to give a shout out to my sister, Victoria, the Happy Stitching Nurse. It was because of her that I met, she had issued me a challenge, and that is why I've been doing these Floss-tube videos. And while it took me out of my comfort zone, it's been a very interesting experience, and it's been very lovely because I'm meeting some new people and receiving a lot of really great encouraging words from people. Another person I'd like to call out is Lisa, who is known as Cross by Floss. That's her YouTube channel. I wanted to say thank you to her because she said very kind words about my sister and I and our videos. And she was making some guesses about us. Yes, we do live in two different states. We both live in warm states. However, we are in different states, so that's one of the reasons why we tend to enjoy our stitching time together via FaceTime. So since this is the last weekend in May, one of the things I wanted to do first off was to talk about my Mania Progress. So the first thing I want to show is where I'm at with the second project for Mania, which is called Nebraska Prairie, and it is from this Winsbottom book by Blackbird Designs. One of the things I'm going to call out right away is the book. I have been opening and using it so much that the cover has actually come off, so I will be taping that to it because I have been using it very, very much with these projects, flipping things, going back and forth. So this is project number 2, and this is the progress I've made so far, so quite a bit actually. It is my first attempt at a 36 count linen. It has been a lot of fun. My project number 3 was I had selected was October 31st from the same book, and that is now an FFO. It has been completed. As you can see, it is my first little mini drum pincushion that I have ever made. I have made some other pincushions, but this is my first one that's a mini drum style. So I just want to talk a little bit about the process I went through, and I'm going to show some pictures of the steps that I took as I went through creating putting together the drum. So the first thing I did was I cut out the bottom and top, so the top being the cross stitch part. I used a template and I added a 1/2 inch border. So I have some photos to show here for that. And the next step I did was I cut out some interfacing, another photo, and I took the interfacing, ironed a piece onto the top and then a piece onto the bottom, and then I cut out the band and pieced together some interfacing and put that on, ironed that on. I pieced together the interfacing because I had a piece that was almost the exact same size I needed with a little triangular piece that was missing, so I just added that. Part of being a quilter is just making do and finding what can work. Next, what I did was I took the band and I pressed a 1/4 inch over on each of the 2 long sides. And what I did to assist with that, so that I didn't have to fuss around with making sure the 1/4 inch was exact, is I cut out a template from some very firm cardboard and used that as a guide as I ironed it. Next, I took the template, so this is where I tried 2 different things. I took a template that I had that I'd cut out of plastic, and I positioned it over some cardboard, cut out the cardboard, and then I took that cardboard piece and positioned it over top of the bottom piece of the drum, and I used some clips to hold it while I whip stitched around it. And that I learned wasn't necessarily the best option. However, it held it so that when I pressed it to make sure that I had a nice clean seam, that it held it together well. So that worked. And then I tried something a little different with the top piece, where I just whip stitched very close to the edge. Then I placed the cardboard template on the inside, pulled in, I drew in the whip stitching, and then pressed it so that I could get that nice crease, so that when I went to future steps, it was a lot easier to have that guideline. So again, some pictures for that. Next, what I did was I sewed the seam of the wall, and then from there I stitched the bottom, I hand stitched the bottom to the wall of the drum. There's a photo of that. Then I decided, because of the size of the pincushion, which, you know, it's a pretty good size, it's actually a 5-inch diameter, I thought, I don't want to just stuff it. I think I want to add a little weight to it. So what I did was I then sewed a pouch, left an opening, and then flipped it inside out, and then took that and added some, I think there's silicone beads that I had from another project for weighting something down, and I put some into there, hand sewed the little opening, put it into the bottom of the drum, and then anchored it in 4 spots, so, you know, northeast, west, and south, so that it was anchored to the bottom, and it just provided a nice bit of weight to it. Then what I did was I began stitching the top to the wall, left an opening, and then stuffed it and stuffed it and stuffed it and stuffed it, and then finished whip stitching around it, and then that was my pincushion. So I was very happy with it. I like the size. I like the fact that the weight holds it nicely without it being too weighted. I've made other pincushions in the past, but none that were cross-stitched. I've made a variety. One of the ones that had been a favorite of mine was a bird cage pincushion, and I had made one for my mother, and I believe I made one for my sister, and also for a couple of friends of mine. So here's a picture of the one that I have today, of course, in the color that I like, and that's the theme for my studio. It was a lot of fun, so I thought it just might be fun to show something a little different and that's outside of cross stitch, but still related to crafting. So that takes us to 3 of the 5 projects for Mania, and so my 4th project from Mania, I'm going to show you the progress for that. It's called Blooming Sunflowers, and here is the progress so far. This is also on a 36 count. One of the things that I have discovered with the 36 count, aside from the fact that I need to use what my sister calls the boyfriend glasses, I'll show those really quickly because it is humorous. These, which are valuable for being able to see that size of a weave, especially at the end of the day when your eyes are tired. But one of the other things that I've discovered is how to do a loop start when using a single strand of floss, and I just took 2 tries and I have now mastered it. It works really, really well. I like it better than all the other starts that I use for whether it be 2 strands or a loop method with a single one that's doubled over. So I'm been really excited about that. I can tell you honestly that I still try to occasionally do a pin stitch just for the practice. Not on these projects, however, and I'm not great at them. I have had some success. What I have not been able to do is successfully complete a pin stitch for the ending of a thread. I have done it, well, let me rephrase that, or restate it rather. I have successfully done it when in an area that I know will be covered by floss. That I can do. What I have not been able to do is use a pin stitch to end floss that will not be covered by other floss. So that is something that has been a bit of a challenge. It's something I will continue to work on because a lot of people talk about it and say how much it works for them. So that's something I'm trying to do. Another thing I wanted to just talk about was a couple of the other tools that I've been using on this Mania project. So I did show last time the project bag that I use, which I had made, and it's one of my favorites. I have other ones. Another thing that I do, and I know it's not the most common approach based on watching other people's YouTube videos. I see most people seem to use either the floss bobbins or the floss drops. And I had tried a bobbin before, and it just was causing me some personal grief. I was just encountering all sorts of issues. So something I decided to try this year before I even last year before I even knew about the drops was to use the floss bags and a ring, a key ring. So that is what I've been using, and I have been having a lot of success with it. I'm really happy with it. So you can see what I do is I keep all of the floss for a project on one ring in their bags, and I like the fact that it keeps anytime you have extra floss in there together, or not extra, but you know, the piece that you're separating, especially when you're using single floss pieces. So that's worked really well for me. And then I have a master ring, 2 rings that I keep all of my floss on. So everything's in numeric order. I know my sister's gonna say it's me being methodical, but it just makes it easier for me to find something. So I keep them on that, and then that way, once I'm done with a project, I'll put the bags back on there into their appropriate spot. And I also do keep a spreadsheet detailing and listing which flosses I have and how many skeins I have. So as an example, if I've used a partial skein for a project, I will take a really good guess as to how much is left, and I will adjust my count on what I have on hand. And in addition to that, on that same spreadsheet, I keep every project listed there and which flosses are for that project, just so that way I know whether or not I have the floss on hand or if it's still something I need to obtain. So that's one of the things I've been using quite a lot, and it works really well for me. So at this point, I'm not going to change it. I might try using a drop or drops at some point in the future for another project just to see how it works out. Another thing I love these are these little tiny scissors. They're really sharp. They have a nice little cover, and I don't think I spoke about them before. If I did, please forgive me. And they're something I picked up at my local cross-stitch store, Stitcher's Garden. I will have them down below. I ended up buying 3 because I've put one in a couple of different bags. I just love how sharp they are. I like the fact that there's a little cover, and they have such a nice tiny little point to them, so it's easy to get in nice and tight when finishing up. And the other thing I've been using is a design board. So here's one. You can see little bits of thread on it. It's one that I made myself using Lori Holt's tutorial on design boards. I had made design boards, oh gosh, 2019 I believe it was, and I made quite a few. I made some for myself of varying sizes, for my mom, my sister, and then friends, and they were part of their gifts that I gave to them at Christmas. I like to give them gifts that are generally related to quilting and now quilting or cross stitch. So that is, those are some of the tools I've been using, and they have been working very well for me. One thing I did want to also call attention to was I'd mentioned last time that when I was working on this October 31st project, I didn't use the floss that was called for in the book. The local cross stitch store did not have the color, so I picked a different brand with a close color. And I mentioned last time that I was having some grief with it and wasn't a big fan of it. And I have to say, it was grievous the entire project. It knotted constantly, it tangled. No matter what I did, I tried every trick that I knew of to try and keep that floss under control, and it just wasn't working. I'm not going to name the brand because it could be that I just had a bad batch. I will try out that brand again at some point in the future. The other thing was I didn't have enough. I got close to the finishing the project and I didn't have enough, so I altered the finishing a little bit. So in here, where I have these designs, and some of that is from replicated, these were actually supposed to be a different type of flower in here, but there was just no way I was going to be able to do it with the amount of floss that I had left. So I was happy that I was able to come up with, just replicate some of the medallions used and just make it work for me. So I'm happy with it that way. I'm happy with the look overall. Just, that floss was so grievous. Something else I wanted to call out was yesterday was a great, fabulous day for me because I had the opportunity to get together with a very dear friend of mine named Sarah as well. We have not been able to have time together, of course, because of the situation that everyone has had for the past year. So this was our first time together in a long time. We talked, we did show and tell. She brought over some of the quilting projects she's completed. She also brought over her temperature project that she's working on. It's a temperature quilt cross stitch project, and it looks so beautiful. Everything she does is beautiful. She always does amazing work. She's very, very talented. And we had lunch, we chatted, we caught up on things, and then we sat and did some cross stitch. And it was just a really lovely time, and I missed that. It was wonderful, and I know you all understand. So we did earlier during the show and tell time, though, I had FaceTimed with my sister so she could see Sarah's show and tell items and give my sister the opportunity to show Sarah her progress. So it was just a lovely time. I'm looking forward to having more of those again soon. One of the things, because I did mention that Sarah had shown her progress on her temperature project, the temperature quilt. I'm working on a temperature tree, just like my sister is. And so here's my progress, which is not as far along as my sister's. It's something I'm going to be spending a little more time on, especially once I can finish more of my Mania projects. And I'm enjoying it. I like it. I like the look. I love the look of Sarah's. looks really pretty because hers has the high and the low for the day. Whereas, of course, with my tree, what I'm doing is just the high. I did consider at one point having the high and the low, but I just went with the high temperature. I'm really enjoying it though. Overall, I am. It's a lot of fun. And let's see what else. Oh, my sister is influencing me. She, she says she's not as methodical, but she is in a lot of other aspects of her life. And it's funny that she says I'm the methodical one with cross stitch. So I saw a Floss-tube by someone called North of the Border, and she mentioned about a stitch along that she's going to be starting on June 1st, and it is called Oh Canada. So she's a woman who has moved from the US to Canada, and she's showed a really beautiful Americana project she had worked on, but she's going to be starting this Oh Canada project, and I loved it as soon as I saw it and had to buy the pattern, so I did, and that may be my next start. Here is a photo of it, what it looks like. I have all of the floss. The one thing I don't have, let me restate that, the one thing I haven't decided is what type of fabric I'm going to use. I'm not keen on having a fabric that looks like the photo. It just looks a little too yellow for me, and I feel like it washes out some of the wheat in the foreground. So I'm either going to use something that's more of a natural color, a natural linen, or I might look at a blue, or maybe even venturing and being brave and trying to dye my own fabric. We'll see. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to wrap up. I've talked longer than I have on other videos, and happy stitching, everyone, and thank you so much for all of the kind comments and support. Please like the video if you've enjoyed this. Feel free, and I would hope that you could subscribe and leave encouraging comments. Thank you so much. Bye.